There we are. Giddy up.
All right, here we go. I mean, oh, shoot.
No swearing on the podcast.
Little Oak Weekly.
Welcome, everybody.
We're back.
We're back. Last time we did that, I think we did this 2 weeks ago in my living room.
Video. Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yep.
That was a good one.
Well, where do you want to start? We got lots of things.
Well, I don't know. Where do you want to start? Office stuff?
Do you want to do, well, yeah, we can do office. We can do a little bit of market. I know you have a couple questions or a question or two. Why don't
we start market stuff?
Okay. So we've gotten through the election.
Yep.
That was an interesting time pre-election.
Mm-hmm.
Big pause in the marketplace. I'm looking at stats here as I'm talking. So we've come through the election and there's some interesting.
Has anything actually started to shift?
Well, yes and no. But if we just said, okay, let's just look at volume of transactions month over month.
Mm-hmm.
The month of April, when was the election? It was towards the end of April.
Yeah.
So the month of April, which is traditionally a very
busy,
booming month,
mm-hmm.
whether we're in an up year or down year,
sure.
For the year in question, April will always be an uptick in relation to the mean, right? And it wasn't. And it was pretty obvious. Everyone agreed, no matter who you talk to, everyone had so many clients that were, just got a text. Can you take a call? I'm in the middle of a negotiation and someone's wanting to know if they can talk. I will just say, call you when I'm done. Sorry, everyone. So everybody pauses in April and then, everyone feels that buyers and sellers, everyone was just going, well, we're going to wait and see. And whether or not they verbalized that, many people did, but not everyone did, but that's what was happening. And then, in retrospect, the numbers show in May 2020, in April 2025, we were tracking, if you look at the sales numbers in total, we basically stayed flat.
Mm-hmm.
In some markets, we went down actually. But it's highly unusual to have April just stay flat or even go backwards.
Yeah.
And so now if you say, well, what's May in relation to April? You can see it here. So through 13 business days, so basically half the month, we're currently, according to, Paragon, we've processed 754 transactions, and that's up, as a percentage. Last month, this time we're at 622.
15.
Yeah, 15 to 20% up. And earlier in the month, we were actually up 30%. So there was a bit of a boom.
Sure.
At the beginning of the month, and maybe that's tailing off, but you never know. This is process deals, right? You never know, is there a big backlog at the board that they haven't pushed through? So it can go up and down each day.
Mm-hmm.
But bottom line is we're up rather substantially for the first time this whole year.
Yeah.
Because January, February, March, there was times in there where we went backwards.
Mm-hmm.
April was relatively flat. And now we're showing a spike in deal volume. And based on numbers, we might be tracking towards somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,400 or 1,500 transactions for the month.
Mm-hmm.
We have not seen that. A month like that, if I go back to my data here and we just go, we go to sales. So we haven't seen let me just go all property types. Look at this. I know you guys can't see this on the screen, but if you go into your, you can see this
Paragon
stats. The stats center. The last time we had anything even around this was April and May of 2024.
Wow.
So a year ago, we had about 1,400 transactions a month. So we're on track to repeat kind of what we had last May.
What's the big increase, or go to the right just a little bit. There was an increase in
here.
Yeah.
So last fall, we had a bit of a bump in fall. So we had dropped all through summer.
Yeah. And
then if you recall, what happened last fall is there was some optimism in the marketplace. Remember, at that time, so we had no Trump USA impact yet, right? Mm-hmm. This was pre-US election. US election was in November.
Yep.
So there was no US effect yet. In Canada, the Liberals were at a 0 approval rating, mm-hmm. right? And it just looked like the Conservatives were going to win in a wash whenever that happens. and Trudeau was still in power. He hadn't backed away yet. And so that we had a bit of momentum in the fall. I mean, it was a bit. We had 1,250 transactions.
It wasn't a bit of a bump compared.
And so I think we all felt that a little bit, and then, it dissipated, and then, everything goes, the U.S. election, and then, Canada, we went into like no man's land with no leader, no government, no parliament, nothing. And then, there was continued negative economic data that came out, and then the trade stuff. And, we've just been in this low point. But right now, at least post-election, it appears as though some of the marketplace has been mentally freed up, right? We were frozen. I talked about fear in the last office meeting, and some of that fear maybe for some of the population has been released, and people are transacting at a higher rate,
right?
Which is great. I mean, our business is driven not by prices. I mean, it's nice to be able to say to a client, hey, prices are going up, but it's volume of transactions that, we thrive on, right? And we've had very, very limited volume, which is why we've been feeling what we've been feeling in the industry. So we've got a bump in transactions right now.
It's interesting in the stat too, on the actual Paragon page, that listings are pretty much the same. Like if you go back to just the Paragon on the main page of Paragon.
Well, if we go to
listings are pretty much.
So these are processed listings. That's not total active inventory. So if you look at
how many were okay.
So through 13 working days, they've processed roughly 2,500 listings in May.
Yep.
And last month it was roughly the same. So we're selling a little bit more. So then logic would say, well, maybe we're chewing into some of that inventory. That being said, you get scenarios like, you don't know, like, well, how many of these listings are brand new and how many of them were canceled and relist and things like that. So the data can get a little bit skewed depending on which way you look at it from. Kurt Dirksen actually has a cool, he created a spreadsheet where he's been tracking total listing inventory for like 2 years. And we are up. We've not, like, month over month, we're still growing. I don't think we've hit the 10,000 mark. So if we just go, we could look at it right now. If we go everything, so multi-class, and we just say active in the Fraser Valley, we're at 95.49. And I mean, if you go back a couple months, there was times early in the year where we were below 9 still. So we bumped over 9. And, we have seen it. I would say that we've been at this number now for a little while. And at least in the last couple of weeks, it hasn't really bumped up. So who knows? It remains to be seen. Like, is the volume of transactions going to keep inventory at this level or lower? Or are we going to see an increase of listings through the rest of May and June? And then who knows, like summertime, in our normal brain cycle, we would say, well, March, April, May, June, there's more, which there always is. And then things kind of peter off July and August. I don't know. Like, I'm not sure about what I feel as though we might be in a delayed spring market where we just see more transactions later in the year. I said this, I think, at the office meeting. I said, I think if you were, like, typically you would say February, March, well, even if you said March, April, May, June, that's traditionally, like, if you were to say, what's the 4-month block where you have the most, that's generally where you're going to see the heaviest transactions. And I wonder if this year, if you were to measure, say, let's say you did February to May, and then compared February to May to June, July, August, September, I wonder if that June to September 4-month blip is going to outperform the February to May, which I haven't gone through and looked at historical years and done that. I'm confident enough to think that if you were to do that in a normal year, you would rarely see June to September outperform February to May.
Sure.
February can be a little hit and miss, but we've had Februaries that are like crazy. And it's a little bit weather and things like that. But March, April, May are typically heavy hitting months. So yeah, we'll see. Right now we have an increased amount of transactions, substantially in comparison to what we've had. We're seeing it on a brokerage level. Like, our deal volume in the brokerage has gone significantly up. We were already, like, as everyone knows, I mean, we've talked about this, we were tracking way ahead of board averages. We were outperforming the board in total by upwards of 25% in the last couple months. which is amazing. But now we're up from that. And I don't know how we're tracking in relation to the board, but we're definitely up deal volume wise.
Mm-hmm.
And I think all of our agents are feeling it. And then we're seeing it obviously in the number of deals coming in. So
good.
So yeah, but it is still, I think what is still obvious is that, when you look at the sales that are occurring, are in the best 10% of priced homes. Like, because we're sales to active listing ratio is at 11.5 as of last month. It might be around that or even slightly lower right now. I'm not sure, but call it 10%. So if you're trying to sell a place and you're not in that 10%, I mean, it's pretty obvious. Those ones sit. And then the ones that are selling are in any price category, in any style, townhome, house, condo, whatever. It's only the stuff that's priced really, in my opinion, according to what the home price index indicates it should be. So if you can take an honest view of what peak value was in early 2022, look at take the specific property. Let's say it was a condo, and in 2022, that condo was worth 650 grand. And then you do the math on it and go, well, the home price index for that condo in that market is down 11%. Then if you can say, well, I believe honestly it was worth 650, it would have sold for 650 then, roll off 11 or 12%. It's at that line or below that sales are occurring. And that is true if you're talking about a luxury home in Fort Langley or, a house in Willoughby or a townhouse in White Rock or whatever. Like It is, I've litmus tested this in different markets where I've just taken test samples and looked at the sales and then run this analysis. And it is like, it's mind blowing actually how obvious it is. There's exceptions to the rule, of course, but 99% of the time, those that are selling, pardon me, it's because they're priced at the appropriate HPI or slightly below.
I obviously am not in the market very much, so I get most of my information from you and other agents, but helping a buddy recently buy a place was
yeah, you did a deal.
Yeah, I don't do.
Congratulations.
I refer everything out. I don't like doing deals. But it was shocking how many overpriced. We were just looking at townhouses at the time in Abbotsford.
Yeah,
just the amount of overpriced ones was pretty crazy.
And so, can you say, is the deal done?
It'll firm up this week.
Okay, so you can't talk about it yet.
Well, what I can say is that it was funny on the buyer's agent side how many seller's agent hounded me.
Yeah,
if I had gone to look at it, which was different than in the last time I did deals was when it was really busy.
Yeah,
and that was again just helping somebody. But there was a huge benefit to me and my client just by being in the office. Like it was an off market purchase.
You did a deal with someone here.
Yeah.
Got it. That wasn't available.
Kurt. I just happened to be chatting with Kurt and he had an off market one that fit the bill. And so we went and looked at it. And so like there was a massive benefit to me and to my client just for finding that. So,
that's good to know.
And it ended up, pricing wise was like right where we wanted to be, but there were so many overpriced townhouses. It was nuts in the same complexes. Yeah. Like the difference in price within the complexes were nuts.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah. I just sold, I don't know what price point you're looking at, but I've sold a townhouse in the last, okay. So it's a little higher than this story, but I sold a townhouse in the last week, 2 weeks, let's say, where when we went to market, there was two in the complex, both listed at 7 to 720. And so, I ran an analysis for my seller. And I mean, admittedly, those were both nicer than our unit because they were more renos and things like that. But what was interesting is I ran the analysis and those were on the market at 720 and they were sitting, they weren't selling. And so I showed this person, I said, here's where I think they fit in. And in light of that, here's where I think we fit in. And then I ran it with the home price index. I talked about peak values. Here's what these were worth. Here's what they were selling for in early 2022. Here's what the market says has happened adjustment wise. So this aligns with what I'm suggesting for values. There's variations in there by 20, 30 grand based on renos and things like that. But so we picked a number that it was funny. So when I listed this place for 649, we had a flurry of activity, like lots of showings. And I had people make comments like, well, you underpriced it and you're going to get multiple. And, some people were even kind of ticked, like, why would you price it that low? Well, it's just amazing. So we had, call it 16 showings.
The other ones are listed at what price?
7 and 720.
And you went in.
And I said to my client, I said, they're not going to get 720. They're going to get like 680, maybe 685, best case scenario. So in the time that we put a deal together, one offer, standard conditions, not multiple offers, not over asking price, we did get exactly our purchase price. The other two end up reducing prices, and one of them has sold now.
What had you listed at when they were
649. So we looked like crazy cheap. Yeah. Well, guess what? One of the ones that was over 7 has now got a deal for 680.
In the ones that I was looking at, there were some that were like a 15% difference in price.
Oh yeah.
Like it was
totally. And that can be the difference between 2022 price and today's price, right? Yeah. So you've got to be, these conversations aren't easy, and it's not like sellers like it. It's, it's not as simple as like, well, this is the whole HPI and there's your number. There's a lot that goes into these conversations, and I have an overpriced listing right now. Like, it's not like, I get it right all the time or can easily navigate every conversation and have everyone do what I want. But it is a heck of a lot easier when you support your opinion with data, and you can show people logically, like, hey, this is where we sit in relation to the market, and here's the sales, and here's the ones that aren't selling. And so these are tough conversations, but it is painfully obvious that anything that's selling is pretty much following that model. So
cool.
Yeah. So you know what? Volume's up right now. We'll take it. And it's hard to know where we're going to go. And, it'll
be interesting going into the summer.
Different every day. But it seems as though, at least right now, there is definitely more confidence than we had 6 weeks ago or 8 weeks ago. And that's a good thing. We'll take it.
Sweet.
Yep. What else? You want to talk office tours?
Yes, we started our office tours. So currently they're running in Abbotsford. I think we're working on trying to get it running in Mission.
Yeah. So the Mission piece, I don't want to misspeak here at all on Christina's behalf, but so we started this in Abbotsford to just
it was a trial,
test it, because we haven't done it in very, very long, and we wanted to see if we'd get agent buy-in and that kind of stuff. So I'll come back to that. But in Mission, the entire market of Mission has actually been running a Mission office tour for a long time, every 2 weeks. And we have now reached out to those people to gauge, like, well, what's your level of involvement and how's it going? And they basically get, I think 10 people on average every 2 weeks. No one consistently from our office that we're aware of, at least consistently, has been going.
There's a couple from Mission.
Couple from Mission who go. Okay, I just said no one. That's two. I didn't mean to say no one, but it's not like we've had 10 people from our office going. So what we're weighing out in Mission is like, well, we don't want to compete with that one.
Yep.
And then we also, is it better to like run our own, or just buy into that one and say, let's go tag into that one? And we're trying to figure out what the right thing to do is. And, all of this is predicated on agent buy-in. Like, we can say we're doing this, and then if 3 people show up, it kind of defeats the purpose.
Yep.
So that's the Mission conversation that's going on right now. And so if you're a Mission agent and you're listening to this, then you know where we're at, and you can certainly reach out.
It's in the works. I know we're talking
and vote with your feet, right? Like, if you want our own, then great. Or if you think it's better to join the existing one, we can do that too. But we just don't want to cannibalize one, or, create something else that is not of value, because we could also just make a concerted effort to be a part of the one.
Because we want to put the effort in to try and help make them keep going and better. And the problem is, if we don't have the agent buy-in, or it's too random with how often,
it dies out.
Very hard.
Yeah. So in Abbotsford, we've gone 3 or 4 now. 3. I couldn't even go to the first 2. I was at 1, and the one I was at, I think we probably had like 8 or 9 agents.
It's getting bigger.
Like that.
Yeah.
And the reality is, like, the more the merrier. And then it boils down to, well, why are we doing this, and what's the benefit? And I know there's agents who have been going consistently in Abbotsford who want more people to come, because they're seeing some people who've never done an office tour.
Sure.
Their eyes are now being open to, like, oh, this is the value. This is what I get out of it. And so the value is in 2 parts, maybe more than 2, but these 2 are big. Number one, if you have a listing on office tour, it's an incredible value add to the seller, checkpoint on value and marketability. You get input from other people, and it's an opportunity to say to a seller, I've just had in-market agents come through your home in large numbers, right? 8, 9, 10, 15, who knows?
Sure.
And here's what they had to say. It's feedback that you have no other way of getting except through showings. And I would even suggest that this is better than a showing in some ways. I mean, a showing's great, but when you have a showing, we all know that
your opinion is reflective of the buyer.
Exactly. Yeah. This is just agents saying, here's what I think of this based on my expertise. And then, so that's one part. And it's, I can tell you, like, having done it years ago, forever, consistently, and then, the market killed it, COVID killed it, and whatever. I had a few properties on tour this past week, and it was brilliant just to be able to like have that happen. The sellers love it. And then it provides an opportunity for a conversation around all of those things: marketability, saleability, value, all that kind of stuff. Right. So
I think they're so much better than open houses. Because people are pushing open houses.
Yeah, totally. You're having people come through the property who are in the business and selling properties. So, it's valuable data. So, and in a world where, we got listings where maybe there's not as many showings, not as much activity, this is an activity that is of high value. Many times I've witnessed sales occur specifically because of something like this, right? We don't get through all the properties on the market. Someone's in a property that they're like, I never thought it was going to be like this, or they think of a client while they're there, and then they make a call, right? So, my phone's buzzing. I'm just turning it off.
You don't have to check it?
There's one thing I have to check, but it's not, it's not that.
Okay.
So that's the two, well, the part one is the value to the actual selling process, right? Part two is the value of physically being together with
other agents,
your peers. Yeah. And that's probably what most people say is even the greatest.
I would say it's
value.
I used to go on tours like when I first started real estate years ago with our office. And that was how I got introduced to a lot of, first off, a lot of our top agents at the time. And they're still top agents in the market. And just learning from them and talking to them. And
totally.
It was actually fun. I actually really enjoyed it.
That's how, I spent many car rides with Larry and Marlene Siebert and Gary Dirksen and Jim Reimer. And, Dave Verwoerd's been around forever, and Dave Verwoerd was in them back then. And guess what? I don't think he's missed one this time either.
Nope.
Suk Sadhu is another guy I spent a lot of time with. So, you learn in those moments. The conversations that happen in a 15-minute car ride between houses are invaluable.
Yep.
So, so that's what we're trying to do. That's the value. And then of course we've got the Surrey and Langley and South Surrey markets, which we would, happily, get to that too. We're just, we've been testing it here, and then, we'll see where we go. So,
if you're an agent in one of those offices and you think it'd be a good idea, like it'd be great to hear from them.
And it might not be, like, the fact of the matter is like, it doesn't, if one office says like, well, we don't want it or whatever, that's fine. Like, this is just an option, and we're happy to drive it and organize it. But at the end of the day, it doesn't work unless we have agents say like, I'm going to make a concerted effort to not just put your listings on, but you really need to just treat, if it's Tuesday morning, you need to treat Tuesday morning, 10 to noon as an appointment every second week or whenever we're doing it. And it's blocked off. And then you're there no matter what. You're there. If you don't have a listing, you're there. And if you have a listing, obviously you're there. And the more people, the more value and benefit to everybody. So it's just a great connection point too. And back in the day, we used to, if you were the last home on tour, then there was this unspoken pressure that you had to provide some kind of goodie. So we would always have like, people would put fresh baking, snacks, whatever. They'd get their sellers into it. The sellers would like bake cookies.
Sellers would love it. Yeah.
Totally. So, anyways, that's that. So it's a work in progress. We're still going to keep moving in the direction as if we're doing it, but we're going slow because we don't want to, we don't want to move in a direction that isn't going to get by.
Well, and we want them to keep going.
Yeah.
So that takes a bit of effort.
Yep. What else?
Sales competitions coming up to its end.
Sales competition. Well, we run through June, right?
We run to June.
We run to June. Yeah. Yeah.
We got whenever we do our social in June. That's where it
yeah. End. Yeah. Has that been advertised yet?
I don't think so.
Okay. But we're gonna have an end party somewhere somehow in June.
Yeah.
I thought you had something.
Well, my thing was actually around what we just talked about, was whether with regards to doing the office tours, and if you had any scenario where you actually can say how it benefited the seller, like any specific scenario.
Oh yeah. So, I mean, I can speak just from my own experience this past week. I mean, I can talk historically about how it's benefited things. I mean, like, just practically speaking, in an environment where we have, we're all maybe carrying some inventory at times where, it's not at the price it quite needs to be, but you need some in-market data or feedback to support making a move, right?
Sure.
So, I've had lots of stories of that in years gone by, but then just, right now, I like I said, I had a few properties on tour last week, and, that information is going to lead to a conversation later this week.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't say what the outcome is yet, but it provides an opportunity for a conversation, and ultimately it'll help sellers come to a conclusion that you've been trying to help them come to.
Yeah.
And it can just be that, that thing that brings you there.
Mm-hmm.
It's also just like, part of being a professional and doing everything you can to sell a home. It's a great, it's a great exercise, but yes. Do I have a story where it's led to actual sales? 100%. I mean, like, I've got stories from years gone by where I said, I can think of one moment in particular where, we're in a home, and then an agent saw the listing and went, "Oh, this would work for," was thinking maybe it wouldn't work for this client because it'd seen it get listed and I don't think so.
Yep.
But then when they stood in it, they're like, no, this would fit. They make a call. The next day there's a showing, and then the day after that there's an offer. That. I have a story in my mind I'm thinking of, but I can tell you that scenario has happened
for sure
many times over the years when we were doing these things consistently. Because sometimes, we're in our brains, with the buyers that are actively on us, they're those ones are easy to remember and deal with. But then we've all got clients or buyers that are more on the peripheral, and it's those convos well, if this were to pop up, or if I could get this, then I would do something. And so it's an example would be you see something that triggers in your brain this is what so-and-so was hypothetically talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe it's not that they buy that place you saw, but it gives you it's an opportunity for a conversation. So now you phone up said buyer who maybe you haven't talked to in a month, and you're like, "Hey, so-and-so, I was just in this property, which I think aligns very much with what we were talking about. I think we should set some time aside
mm-hmm.
to go look at it. Not because you're going to buy it.
Sure.
But I want to confirm whether or not this is what we're talking about. This would help us in our conversation."
Sure.
So it's a win on every level,
mm-hmm.
right? You're possibly just moving a client farther along in the process, and all of this transpires because you're spending time in something you otherwise wouldn't have been in.
Yeah.
And it's just keeping, these conversations top of mind. So
cool.
That's a practical example of something that used to happen all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so we want to see that happen.
Sweet. The only thing I'm going to ask you is, heading into June towards the summer, what's your game plan typically with your clients?
So, I waited to do I'm going to reach out to my clients now with a message at the end of this month, which is a post-election. I told everybody I was going to do this. I've delayed something that I would have normally done earlier because I wanted to let the dust settle on the
mm-hmm.
election, and now do a what now kind of conversation. And that I'm going to do now.
Mm-hmm.
And then because I delayed that, normally I would have something go out kind of at the end of June-ish.
Sure.
And maybe I'll do that too. But something that I definitely like to do is, once you get into summer, into the meat of summer, like 2-3 weeks into July or something like that. That's more of like just a personal touch in where it's not really a market update or anything like that. It's just hey, hope you're having a wonderful summer. Here's what I've been up to. Maybe a pic from the family or something like that. It's a personal connection. You're at the beach or whatever. And it's just, it's one of the
extra thing that leads them into the fall so that they've seen you.
Yeah. And it's just one of the layers of maintaining relationship, right? Like I think it's important not to be so robotic on, market and data. Sure. Like they know if you're in touch with your people regularly and you've got relationship with them, they know that you know the market. They know that you can always talk about data, but humanizing yourself, sprinkling that in and showing them your family or your kids or things that you're interested in. That's actually the glue to the relationship, in my opinion. People, we work hard not to be viewed as commodities. When you're viewed as a commodity, you can easily just be whittled down to a price, like gasoline, right? But you can remove yourself from the viewpoint of a commodity if you become a human being and you have personal interests and likes and similarities with your clients. And, a great example of this is whether he intends to do this well or not, he does it well. Andreas Willems. I mean, he is an example of a guy where like, he is who he is, right? 100%. He puts it out in the world the way he thinks, the things he loves. And lo and behold, guess who works with him?
Same people.
People who are aligned with the things that he likes. It might have nothing to do with his knowledge of the data.
Sure.
It's just like, I like that guy because he likes to go hunting exactly. So it's important that we find ways to sprinkle in our humanity in our communication with our clients. And I use summer as one of the ways to do it. Yeah, totally. Yeah. It's like, hey, here's what we're up to. We're at the beach, whatever. Here's a picture of my daughter years ago, I used this. This is an awesome picture. We had just cast lines in. We didn't know what we were doing.
Where were we?
We were at Shuswap.
Okay.
So she catches this. It's hilarious. Like she just throws this. I put a lure on the reel and throws it in, and like 4 casts later, the rod tip is just going. And I'm like, holy cow, she's got a fish. So she starts reeling this thing in. I have a picture of this, and the picture's hilarious because this is when my kids were younger. Ebony is more of the mentality like kill all things. They're all meant for human consumption. And my son, who's a little more tender, is in the photo in the background. He's running away in tears because Ebony has pulled this fish out of the water and she has these killer eyes on. And Malachi is running away to mom.
Devastated.
Don't kill the fish. And this fish is like probably like a 2.5-3 pound, beautiful. I think it was I want to say it's a brown trout or a lake trout. It wasn't a rainbow.
Are they normally that big in Shuswap?
Oh, they can be huge. It's huge. Like, you can have the Shuswap's got fish that are, I think, 15 pounds.
Oh, wow.
So anyways, I remember using that photo in some way or another. And I mean, the response that you can post a market update and this and that, and then you get crickets. You post something like that, or you send that out in an email, and like, everyone's like, oh, I got a story like that or whatever. Or like even little comments like, well, I hope she killed it. We didn't kill it, actually. We let it go. And then we ended up catching a second one. And then we had the same waterworks. So we never killed it. We never ate it. And then what's been funny from that story is like every time we go up to the lake on the drive up, there's always a joke. Like this is like 8 years, 9 years later. Like, oh, Dad, if we catch a fish this time, are we allowed to kill it, or is Malachi the baby
he's just not going to outlive it? Totally. That's awesome.
So
it is true, though. You will probably drive way more interaction and response from clients when it's a personal stuff.
100%. Totally. So, we need to know the data and the stats and, be prepared to be able to talk through it. But if we only load our people up with that, then you're just going to be viewed in one way.
Sure.
Humanizing yourself and letting them into your personal life.
People don't connect to numbers.
No, not at all.
It's a good thing for them to understand, but they don't connect to numbers.
Yeah. So, like whether it's a summer vacation, like anything, it can be, what you're doing around the Thanksgiving table or, whatever. All of those things are opportunities to sprinkle some of that into your yearly communication. And that is the glue to the relationship. I'm constantly reminded by that. Like I have client interactions as recent as this week where, I'm sitting there and we're in conversation and we're looking at something and I'm kind of having an internal conversation in my head, and I'm realizing that these people are working with me. Some maybe are working with me because, they view me as the pro or whatever. But most of them, I think, are there because there's a personal connection. They've got a common feeling or vibe or, similar life circumstances. I've let them into a certain degree. And because we have those shared common interests and I have a good understanding of market data and knowledge, whatever, but the glue is the personal connection.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's a good way to end it.
That's it. We're done.
Do you have anything else?
Well, I can always talk about more things. Okay. I'll talk about one more thing because it's a common scenario that I touched on this a little bit in the office meetings,
which people need to be coming to. There's so much value in our office meetings.
Yeah, we've certainly upped the training value content in the office meetings, or so we've heard through feedback. So it's not just you and I saying it.
No, that is definitely feedback we've got.
So one of the things that we discussed was we've got this, I guess I just call it bad habits that were created through a very different time in the market. Like in the COVID era, we had no inventory and everyone was afraid of being homeless.
Sure.
So the mindset of a seller in that time was, well, I can't list my home unless what's going on in the camera? You're making sure we're still recording.
Yeah.
The mindset was, or the path for people was, well, I buy first, then I sell. And I certainly just don't list my home blindly without knowing where I'm going. And that made sense when we had 1,800 homes or 2,500 homes for sale and the market was doing this and it was a fight to be able to buy anything. But we are so far removed from that now, but we haven't unlearned some of those, we'll call them bad habits today. They were good habits in 21, 22. They were necessary, but they're bad habits in an environment where we got 9,500 homes for sale. And admittedly, I'll say the counter argument that people can make is, sure, we have 9,500 homes for sale, but only 10% of them are priced properly, as you experience. So I get that. I'm not blind to that. But that is not unlike any other down market with high inventory. I mean, we go back to, I always reference 2008, 2009, because it was my first brutal market experience. And, but even if we don't go back that far, if we go back to 2019, which was a little bit softer environment, we hadn't gone through the COVID world yet. So our brains hadn't been rewired in a different day. We had far less people than we have today, like way less people in 2019 thinking that it's a reasonable strategy to list a home for sale. And then when you get an offer from a buyer, go to the buyer, well, we now need 3 weeks to try to find something. Like that didn't happen.
Nope.
That never existed. I mean, in the rarest circumstances it did, but it was not common practice.
It was pretty often. And you just had an extended.
You just go, hey, we need time completion to find something. Let's go 3.5, 4 months completion, and then we'll hunt. And so, I say all that because I know there's stories around that many agents have of this occurring. I've personally encountered it now multiple times.
It was a surprise when people talked about that, I think, at the office meeting, that was a thing people were writing in now.
Oh, like I went through the most incredible experience. I was shocked. Like it was the domino effect was,
I remember you talking
there was literally, my buyer tries to buy something. That seller goes, well, we won't sell unless we can buy this. Okay. We kind of try to find a way to work with them. They
go to this. So you mean a specific property?
They wanted a specific, in this case, it was like that townhouse.
Oh, get out.
That one.
Why hadn't they written on it for a subject to sale or something?
Well, because this is the conundrum. Well, that person doesn't want a subject to sale offer. So we have to pick our poison. Which way do you want to operate? Do we want to all operate wherever the whole market goes? We'll deal with subject to sales and we're just going to do it that way. Or we have to say, well, we're not doing that because that's not best practice. So we should just list a home for sale, have an understanding of what the person's trying to buy, take the people out before you put the home on the market, give them a taste of what's available, make sure that you feel confident that you can buy what, we're going for, and then educate them and help them understand that when we have an offer in hand, we're now going to become live active buyers and we're going to have all the negotiation strength in the world because we're now in the minority and we can find you what you want. And a lot of the pushback we're running into in this conversation on a whole market is, in my opinion, it is a lack of professionalism amongst the real estate agents. We are not handling this conversation well. And so now we end up with listings on the market where they're truly not saleable, because if you're going to get an offer in hand and then the seller is going to go, well, wait a second, I need to get you don't have an opportunity to transaction. Only in the most unique circumstances can you make that work. And I know that this is not black and white, so don't shoot me if you're thinking of a scenario right now where you think I'm wrong. I get it, but this should not be the standard practice. This should not happen the majority of the time. And we have history to show us that in any other time when we've had this kind of inventory, this has not been the way. And I think we're getting in our own way right now because we're not unlearning some of those standards that we learned out of necessity when we only had 2,000 homes for sale. Now we got 9,500. We're not doing our clients a favor by training them in this way and telling them that this is the path to go, because what's going to happen is we lose the opportunity for them to transact, which is what they really want. And we just need to provide them with the expertise and confidence that they're going to end up where they want to end up. So I know that that is a bit of a hot button, and some people might argue that, and for certain circumstances, I get it. I'll give you that. But that's not the 90% of the time. That's the 10% of the time. The majority of the time, we can do this successfully. And I can say from personal experience right now, I've got 2 places listed for sale where those people do want to end up in something specific. And so what we've done in both circumstances is, prior to going to market, we went out and looked at the product in the price range we're going to be hunting. That gave us confidence to go, okay, when the time's right, we know we can get something. So now we go list the property, work to get a deal in place. We will negotiate as best we can on dates, right? Maybe even put something in there where you've got a clause in there that gives you flexibility over dates. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing wrong with that. Or long dates or whatever.
Yep.
And then you get into the financing conversation as it relates to that, because maybe you negotiate long dates on closing, but you've dealt with their financial professional and you help them figure out the path to a bridge loan.
Yep.
So that they can complete weeks in advance of their sale completion, which gives them a beautiful move, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because now all of this is interconnected, and this is the professionalism I'm talking about. We need to do a better job as professionals in our marketplace with all of our clients to help them properly navigate a sale in today's market, not a 2021 or 2022 market. It's very different today. And there's transactions that aren't occurring. Last month we had 1,000 transactions. We could have way more transactions than that if we had a higher level of skill amongst the agents. It has nothing. There's a piece of this that has nothing to do with the consumer.
Yeah.
The consumer is going to do whatever they're told they're allowed to do to a certain degree. There's
no way a consumer knows about this idea of, I want 3 weeks to find
No. And don't forget, a lot of our clients are they're carrying baggage, as we all are. We're all carrying baggage from 20 and 21. Yeah. And it's like, this baggage, we need to say, okay, we're going to put that there because that was then, and this is now, and here's how things work now. So that is part of our job. We've got to drop that baggage on the side of the road and leave it where it was and get to doing business the way it makes most sense for today. Just like we did in 20 and 21 and 22.
Mm-hmm.
We changed the way we did so many things out of necessity. So we're capable of change by educating our clients. We've got to educate our clients better.
Just out of curiosity, these subject to at least, or these 3 weeks or whatever it is to find a place, are these subjects for the seller?
Yeah, subject for the benefit of the seller.
Get out, really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you write an offer and then the seller puts the subject in and says, the buyer's locked. So now the buyer who's trying to find something goes like, so now I can't do anything. I just sit here and wait for you while and what confidence do we have in you that you're going to get what you want? And what is it you're trying to get? And are you willing to pay them full price? Or are you trying to knock them down 40 grand? Like, who knows? Right? We don't know. And so, I had an extreme case of this where there was 3 dominoes that needed to fall for us to be able to buy what we were buying. It was ludicrous. And since then, it's taken an extra 2.5 weeks, but we've talked our way through that situation. And I now have a normal deal done for the place that we wanted to buy, but we had to go through the hoops that we had to jump. And ultimately we had to talk somebody out of this mindset and get them to a point where they're prepared to go forward. And we did that successfully, but it took an extra 2.5 weeks. And there's a lot of scenarios where that's not happening. The transaction just falls apart.
I can't imagine being able to tell a buyer it's a good idea to be locked in for 3 weeks where you can't get out.
Well, that's the other argument, right? Which I mean, so if a buyer
negotiating the price way lower for taking that,
good luck.
Seller lose.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing.
To me, that's the same as a subject to sale. The subject to sale, the buyer loses all the power. I would have thought something like that, the seller would have to eat it a little bit. It becomes a roadblock
in a lot of transactions, and so it's impossible to measure this, but in the last 4 months, how many transactions, if we said, well, in the last 4 months, there's been roughly 4,000 transactions in the Fraser Valley, how many more would have been possible to have had we done a better job as professionals setting people up? I would like to suggest that maybe as much as 20%, 10%, probably could have had another 400, 500, 600, 700 transactions in the Fraser Valley board. Just because of this, not because, some of the market dip, you could say, well, it's the conditions, it's whatever, it's fine. Absolutely. But some of it falls on us. And so in that part, we can do better and we can have an impact on the volume of transactions in the market, which at the end of the day helps our clients and helps us. But we got to recognize it and be prepared to walk people through those conversations and bring confidence to the situation.
For sure. Cool.
Okay, that's it.
That was a good way to end it.
There you go. We're done. It was a repeat a little bit of what we talked about in the last office meeting, but maybe I said it a bit differently. So
yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Okay. See you soon.